Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got a wild story out of New Jersey sent to me by quite a few people. Off-duty New Jersey officer fatally struck a pedestrian and put the body in his car, according to prosecutors. Widely reported, NBCnews.com. And if you simply search the phrase New Jersey pedestrian, you'll get this story. And like I said, widely reported. The off-duty officer allegedly hit the man, put the victim in his car, went home, discussed what to do with some other people, and then returned to the scene. This is all written by Phil Helzel. A New Jersey police officer is accused of striking a pedestrian who died, taking the man's body home to discuss what to do, and then returning to the scene with the dead man in his back seat. This is all according to a prosecutor who spoke a few days ago. The Newark officer is 25 years old. His passenger and his mother are charged in the incident, according to acting Essex County prosecutor Theodore Stevens II, and he issued a written statement to describe this. The officer was off duty and allegedly struck a 29-year-old man while he was walking around 3 a.m. on the shoulder of the Garden State Parkway. So there's a 29-year-old man walking on the shoulder of the parkway, and this man, who's an off-duty police officer, hits him and apparently kills him. Now, neither the driver nor his passenger called 911 or rendered any aid to him after he was struck, and that, of course, is the problem. They reportedly went back to the scene several times before they put the victim into their car. They then went to the driver's home where he and his passenger and his mother discussed what they should do. I just hit a guy. Where? Side of the road. Well, is he still out there? No, he's in my car. The man then eventually went back to the scene, and his father, who is a lieutenant, called 911. New Jersey State Police arrived, and they found the man dead in the back seat of the car still. And that, again, is according to the prosecutor's office. The driver is charged with reckless vehicular homicide, desecrating human remains, tampering with physical evidence, and other charges that include official misconduct, according to officials. Meanwhile, the other two are charged with counts that include conspiracy to desecrate human remains and hindering apprehension, according to the prosecutor's office. All three were arrested and released with conditions, according to the prosecutor's office. It was not immediately clear recently if they had attorneys, and a phone number for them could not be immediately located, so they couldn't call them for comment. Newark police declined to comment, referring all questions to the prosecutor's office. Prosecutor simply issued a statement and left it at that. So it's a bizarre story. And the thing about it is that if you're driving along and you hit somebody, there's a whole bunch of things that could have happened there. And there are situations where somebody gets hit while they're walking at the far edge of the shoulder, and the only reason they got hit is that the driver of the car that hit them was not paying attention, fell asleep at the wheel, or was drunk. Those are all three possibilities, right? That's possible. I've also heard before where somebody's walking down the middle of the road on an unlit road at 3 o'clock in the morning, right around a curve. And someone comes around a curve, can't avoid them, and hits them. So you have a whole spectrum, a whole range of possibilities where it could be entirely the driver's fault or a lot the pedestrian's fault. It's hard to, I think, come up with a situation where the pedestrian is completely at fault unless the pedestrian jumps in front of the car or something like that. But again, that's possible too. So the mere fact that you hit somebody with your car does not mean that you are going to prison for life. But one of the things you have to remember is that if you take a snapshot of what happened, the moment in time where the person hits the pedestrian, if you take a snapshot of that moment in time, that is not the only thing they look at to determine what's going to happen to you. Because what you do following that speaks volumes about what you were doing and thinking before that. So when they take a look at a crime scene and they take a look at a series of events that surround a crime, and I'm talking about investigators, they'll often look to see how someone behaved after something happened. Because one of the things you probably know from watching TV shows is that your mental state plays a lot into what kind of a crime you're charged with. If you premeditate something, it is a serious crime, more so than something that's an accident. Okay? So, if you're driving down the road and you accidentally hit somebody, what do? You get out of your car, you render aid, and if necessary, call 911 as quickly as possible and do what you can to help this person, and you might not get in trouble for that. It depends on the situation. On the other hand, if you hit somebody and you freak out and you flee the scene and you come back and you grab the body, flee the scene again, come back, and then call the police now after all this time has passed and you've discussed with other people what to do, you know what to do. What you're supposed to do is immediately stop, render aid, call 911. So if you know that that's what you're supposed to do, why are you doing all this other stuff? And the fact that you're doing all this other stuff indicates possibly that maybe it wasn't just a simple accident that was entirely not your fault. Because if it's entirely not your fault, you don't freak out like that. And I've told the story, and I apologize. I know some of my viewers are getting sick of this one. But back when I drove a tow truck, there was a woman who hit a telephone pole with her car. And she did it about 100 feet from her house. So when I got to the scene, there's a car rammed into a telephone pole. It's leaning like this. And the car's bent up pretty bad, and the driver's not there. And I asked the police officer, I go, where's the driver? And he points, and he goes, she lives right there. And there's a cop on her front porch banging on the door. And she wouldn't answer the door. And I later spoke to the police, and they said, yes, she showed up the next morning with an attorney at the police station. And now, it doesn't take a brain scientist or a rocket genius to figure this one out. If I had to bet money on it, she hit the pole because she'd had a few too many to drink. She stumbled home and got inside the house and thought, ooh, I dodged a bullet. And the police in that jurisdiction chose not to go get a search warrant or anything like that. And they simply said, you better show up tomorrow morning or we're going to come get you. So she shows up the next morning, she gets ticketed for leaving the scene of an accident instead of drunk driving and causing an accident. So you can sometimes draw conclusions from how people behave. Now, can we prove that the driver of the car that hit the telephone pole is drunk? Probably not, okay? Seems like a very good guess. But the off-duty police officer, that is important, by the way, who flees the scene of an accident where he hits a pedestrian and kills him, and then does all this goofy stuff afterwards. You look at that and you go, okay, he's a cop. He knows what he's supposed to do. He knows the law. That's the real thing here. If a 16-year-old driver who had just gotten their license a week earlier, or whatever license you get in New Jersey where you're allowed to drive at night, for instance, and you get that license and you hit somebody and you freak out, I could almost understand that a little bit more than this. But the off-duty officer knows the law, knows what he's supposed to do, and instead does all this wacky stuff where he's driving around with a dead body in the back of his car. It's insane. It's insane. So some of the other charges, desecrating a human body. I mean, you understand that they're just simply going with what they can here. But the real issue they have is if you hit somebody and they're at the side of the road, somebody can come by and draw some conclusions from looking at that. Now, obviously, if emergency responders show up and they're trying to help this person and they move them around and eventually put them on a stretcher and put them in an ambulance and take them to the hospital, then there might not be that much evidence there. But what evidence is there is certainly gone the moment you pick the person up, put them in your car and drive off with them. So it's a bizarre story. It's a bizarre story. But again, from NBCnews.com, Phil Helzer wrote it. Stephen with a V, Guy, Gordon, and Robert all sent it. Off-duty New Jersey officer fatally struck a pedestrian, put the body in his car, and has now been charged with a raft of crimes. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I can do all things through spite, which strengthens me.